Okay, so we are nearing the end of Shar HaKas in the Orchos Tzadikim. So we're going to go back. We started the second to last paragraph, a few lines into it. We'll start again from there. Says the Orchos Tzadikim, V'da, one should know, Ki gemar seichel shel adam, hu sheyimshol al HaKas. So I'll tell you what, we'll translate the words. It's unclear to me exactly what he means. The gemar ha-seichel means like the finished product. Like gemar ha-kli is the finished vessel. You know, there's the gemar, there's the beginning, there's the middle, and there's the gemar. So gemar seichel shel adam, we would say in Yiddish, the fartika seichel, which means the finished, complete intellect of a person. Hu sheyimshol al hakas, is that he should be able to control anger. As it says the pasuk in Mishlei, seichel adam he'erich apoy. The intellect of a person is the ability to literally elongate his anger, which means to hold off, to control, to limit his anger. Hakas, so that's one thing that he says. This is the gemar seichel shel adam. I guess, you know, the spitz seichel, the most robust expression of intellect is to be able to control oneself from losing their intellect. So as the Orchos Tzadikim mentioned a number of times in the Shar, what anger does to a person is it causes him or her to lose themselves. That's why it's likely they're doing idolatry, because once a person loses his seichel, who knows what he or she is going to do. So in a similar vein, the gemar ha-seichel, if you want to know someone whose seichel is finished, is complete, that's a person who can control his anger. Hakas loitem oil agaiva. Anger very much it leans towards arrogance. It'll push a person in that direction. And therefore it's fitting for a person to distance himself from anger. Even something that is it's worthy of getting angry about. There are things that are worthwhile. It's justified to get angry. But the person who is an angry person should hold himself back from getting angry. So to the balakas, a person who's predisposed to anger, has to, before the situation comes, before the stimulus comes, he has to already decide he's not getting angry. He has to make himself emotionless. A person who knows he has a propensity to get angry has an obligation to make himself not care, make himself shlo yargish klal, afilu huka, even if they hit him, the kula, and they curse him, lo yirgois lo yochush. He should not get upset. He should not, have any feelings, because it's an interesting dynamic that, in other words, a person has to always figure out, what is my goal? What's my goal, right? So, certain people have various issues with other people, sometimes with you had a falling out with a friend, or whatever it might be. You have issues, and a person can be acting vindictive towards someone else, and that person comes and says, well, how am I supposed to deal with this person? Maybe it's like an ex-spouse. So the way to deal with it, the question is, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy? That's the question one has to ask oneself. Like, what's my goal? And if I want to be right, so I'm not going to pay for that charge, and this is not fair, and I'll act in a certain way. But if my goal is to be happy, to have simcha sachayim, so I don't care if I win, if I lose this battle. I just want to be happy. I define winning by me having yishuv hadas. So if a child does something or a coworker does something, and they're wrong, they're taka wrong. What they did was wrong, and anger is justified. So if you're a person, if I'm a person who's very calm, I don't get angry really ever, except whatever. So this person, mamash, did the wrong thing, I'll get angry. But a Baal HaKas, someone who's an angry person by nature, certain people are predisposed to anger. A person who's like that, his avodah, when the child, this is not from any experience, this example is not from any personal experience, but let's say a child would be riding a scooter in the house, and they were told a number of times not to, and they bang into the wall, make a big dent in the wall, right? So the avoida for a Baal Kas, right? What the goal of the person who's predisposed to anger is to not get angry. So you have the referee, Kiviyachal, HaKadosh Baruch, who's like standing there, and he sets up this whole matzav, where the kid goes into the wall, and he's waiting to see how I'm going to react, right? And I'm being tested. The person's being tested. So the kid has to be dealt with. It's a separate discussion, right? But the shaila is, how do I react? That's the test. So if you're a very calm person, you can get upset. But if a person's a Baal Kas, his avoida is not to get angry. So if he gets angry and the kid apologizes and the kid gets in trouble and he never does it again, right? And the father got angry or the mother got angry. So you feel, oh, gavaldik, I that happened, the kid was wrong, and I won. Like, I mamish was over in the Nisayan, and I punished the kid, and I shmoozed him effectively. I was educated my son, I was mechanech him, and now, I've passed the flying colors. In reality, the guy failed miserably. If he got angry, he failed. Hashem doesn't care so much how I'm going to react to the kid. It's a separate discussion. The shaila here was, is this person going to get angry? If a Baal Kas gets angry, he failed his test. So the perspective is different. But if you would tell the guy, I'll give you $10,000 if you don't get angry, oh, that's the goal now, it's very easy. So once knowing is half the battle, as they say, but once the Baal Kas is aware, then Hashem is going to test him throughout the day, probably, to see if I can get him angry. So then he won't get angry. Like the Maisa with the Gemara in Brachos, the Gemara in Shabbos, the Brachos, with Hillel, Brachos. With Hillel Hazaken, the guy tried to get him angry, asked him all these questions. Why are these people out there slanty eyes? Why are these people that? And Hillel didn't get angry. He didn't get angry because he realized that was the test that he was going through. But also another important nakuda before we go weiter is the only way that's going to happen is if before the kid plows into the wall with the scooter, the parent already decided that he or she is not going to get angry. You can't leave it up to b'shas ma'aseh, right? So if I know I'm going into a hostile environment, a workplace, whatever it might be, so I can't think about it, what's called b'shas ma'aseh, in the heat of the battle. One has to decide beforehand that I do not want to get angry. This is a clear thing. Mishu kaptan harbe, a person is very makbid, which means that he's very particular. It's better for him not to make himself not feel, to make himself not be moved by whatever happens in this area. He should be quiet. He should, don't get upset at all. Don't say a word. The kid goes into the wall with the scooter. There's no need to lash out on the spot, right? The issue there is that the kid acted irresponsibly. Now, is there enough nafkamina if the parent responds right away? And it's even better with adults, right? Like in a shul setting, let's say, or in a school setting, or in a work setting. So someone does something, right? 99 out of 100 times, you don't gain by acting on the spot. You don't gain by that, right? There's nothing to be gained. So besides just letting off steam. So says the Orchos Tzadikim, the angry person, if that happens, yishtoik v'yadso rucha. He should be quiet and hold himself back, legamri completely, rather than getting a little bit angry. In other words, there are times that it's justified to get a little bit angry, but the Baal Kas, the person who's predisposed to anger, don't say a word. A kas on a person, an angry person, cannot just get a little bit angry. If he lets himself get a little bit angry, he'll be very angry in the end. Someone who wants to stop himself from getting angry, at the same time, he wants to instill fear in his family, which sometimes is justifiable. And if he's a leader of a community, so he wants them to come back on the derech, and they did something wrong, and he feels an obligation to let them know. Kate said, Yasser, what should he do? He's allowed to show himself like he's angry in order to put them on the path. but his das should be very calm. It should be very clear to him that he's only doing it for the kid's benefit, or for the person's, for the family's benefit. Like a person who's showing that he's angry, but not really angry. When he shows his anger, so interesting what he's saying over here, that if a person has poor guests in the house, he's going to show himself angry at whoever it is. So the guests are going to think that I'm angry at them for some reason. So I guess one has to be careful when he gets angry that other people should not think that he's getting angry at them. It sounds like what he's saying. So he finishes up, the Chachamim command us that a person should distance himself from anger to the point that he doesn't feel, he's not moved, even things that anger him. So interesting, at the end of this Shara Kas, the Orchos Tzadikim is talking to the Kas, and he's talking to the person who is angry by nature. And he's telling him, and the Rambam says this also in Hilchos Deis, that the way that you uproot a bad midah is by going to the other extreme. And it appears in the Orchos Tzadikim that one is allowed to have small amounts of kas, as long as you can control that. So a regular, really, really nice guy is allowed to get a little bit angry sometimes. But a person who's naturally an angry person, he can never get angry. He can show himself he's angry, but he can't really be angry until he uproots the kas from his nature. And it sounds like the way a person does that is just by repeatedly not getting angry. I mean, I guess one could be misbeinin, one can contemplate bitachon, that whatever happens that a person does, if it happened to me, it's because Hashem wanted it to happen to me, that doesn't absolve them. But as far as my anger and frustration, if it was a hit and run on my car, he hit my car and then I ran away, so I deserve that to happen to me. So I have to deal with that. If I can find the guy and bring him to court, I'll do that too. But there's a certain level of bitachon a person has to have. And that will stop him from being angry. So the balakas can never get angry, and the regular person can sometimes get angry. But the nekuda is, the method of avodah is to try to make it that it doesn't move me anymore. It used to bother me if it was a toy on the floor. I tell you actually a true story, that you come home sometimes and there could be toys all over the floor, right? So I used to always pick them up, and I don't want to come home and there should be no toys on the floor. Until once, I don't know if I heard Rabbi Schreck speaking, or if I read it in one of his books, one of his svarim, but he mentioned that one day you're going to miss having the toys on the floor. And it doesn't mean your house can be a hefkerveld, right? But it just puts things in perspective sometimes. That's the mahalach of a person comes in and sees toys on the floor, he gets upset. But if he realizes, Baruch Hashem, that means there are kids in the house. And one day, there aren't going to be kids in the house. And we're going to wish there were kids in the house. So that changes the mindset. It changed a little bit the person's mindset. And the avodah is not to get angry, not to be moved, not to be bothered by so many things. Now, that doesn't mean that you let the wrong thing go on, right? There's two things. One thing is intellectually to recognize this is wrong, and I have to rectify it. I have to figure out a way to make it correct. The second thing is the anger, is the emotion. So from an emotional perspective, the halachic way to approach it, the Jewish way to approach it, is to never be moved by anything. When it comes to the midah of kas, when it comes to anger. That's the chiddush over here. In general, the Torah encourages us to be human. So if a person suffers a loss, there's no inyan in not being margish that. There's no inyan in training oneself that I don't feel connected to anyone. So if anyone dies, I'm not moved. There's no such halacha, there's no such goal that a person should totally detach himself from sorrow, right? But when it comes to kas, there is. That's the unique aspect of kas, that a person has to train oneself to never become angry or frustrated. I can recognize a wrongdoing and rectify that, but the feeling inside should just be one of, I'm taking care of business, I'm not upset at anyone. The derech tzadikim, the way of the righteous, Heim ne'elovim v'loy ovim. So they get insulted, right? Someone can insult them, v'loy ovim, but they don't fight back. They don't insult back. Shoymin cherpasam, they hear their embarrassment, their cherpa, their busha, they hear a person making fun of them and pointing at their shortcomings, the einom meishivim, and they don't respond. Usmeichim b'yisurim, and they're happy with affliction. This is the Gemara in Brachos and Daf Hey, discussed that at length. We've been learning Sunday mornings, as well as the Gemara in Shabbos Peches talks about this. And then the pasuk says, those who love Hashem are like as strong as the sun. When the sun comes out with all its gevura, with all its might. That's what these people are like. So that's the Nakuda. The derech of the tzadikim is they don't fight back. They don't really hold themselves to be so high. They let themselves get insulted, and they don't fight back. That being said, if it's an affront to Torah, if someone's making fun of Yiddishkeit, someone's making fun of a Talmud Chacham, then you are over them. Then you do have to fight back. But when it's just a personal zach, it's a personal thing. Someone's yelling at you, like whatever. Let's say you cut someone off. You didn't cut someone off. They thought you cut him off, so they roll down the window and they start yelling. Am I going to get into a conversation? Like, is that really, hey, fine, say what you want. Negate weiter. The person should not let himself be moved. So that is the shar hakas. That is we finished now the gate of anger, and it's definitely one of those midas that one must stay very, very far away. It's one of those unique midas that the person will lose himself in that midah. To me, one of the biggest chidushim from this shar was when the Orchos Tzadikim said that an angry person cannot have simcha in his life. It's not possible for a person who's angry, Misha Ragil Bakas was a lashon, a person who is accustomed, he on some consistent basis he gets angry. Chayav einam chayim ve'ena sameach l'olam. His life is not life, and he's never content. He's never besimcha. Now again, if he wins the lottery or if something good happens, he buys a new car, so of course he'll be besimcha. He'll be happy, but he won't have simcha. There's a certain quality of life the angry person doesn't have. And the people who are happy-go-lucky happen to have a certain quality of life that the angry people don't have. It's a tremendous chiddush. That his life is not life. Ve'enoi sameach la'olam. He's never truly besimcha. He's never truly content. So that is the tremendous imperative to make sure that a person uproots the anger from his heart. So we have a minute or so let's just begin the Shar HaTshuva, or we'll just maybe talk about it, and maybe we'll begin it next time. If you go through all the gates in the Orchos Tzadikim, so they're all about character traits, what we call midos. You have gaiva, anavim, arrogance, humility, busha, embarrassment, cruelty, love, hatred, empathy, again, cruelty, simcha, daiga, charata, kas, we just learned, jealousy. These are all midos. There are 2 gates out of the 28. They're not midos, they're mitzvahs. So the point of the Orchos Tzadikim, that means it's the path of the tzadikim, right? The path of the righteous. So it's teaching us how to be righteous. So it's not teaching us put on tefillin. You have to put on tefillin to be righteous. You have to keep Shabbos. There's no Shar HaShabbos here. That's a detail. There are 28 like fundamental, I guess, concepts or ways that one lives that makes him into a tzaddik. Then mimela he'll keep all the mitzvahs. There are 2 exceptions. There are 2 mitzvahs out of the 613 that make it into the Sefer Orchos Tzadikim. 26 chapters all about midos, character traits. 2 are mitzvahs. That's Shar HaTshuva, which is 26, and 27 is Shar HaTorah, the gate of Torah, of Talmud Torah, of what the Torah is. Those are 2 gates that are mitzvahs. So if the Orchos Tzadikim of all the Torah mitzvahs, he's picking these 2, it sounds like these 2, if you want to be a tzaddik, this is 101. This is Tzidkus 101, righteousness 101. And everything comes from here. Once a person can master these 28 gates, then he'll keep put on tefillin. He's not going to wear shanis. He's going to keep Shabbos. He's not going to speak lashon hara. Right? This is what gets a person to that level. But these are the 2 exceptions. They're mitzvahs that I guess are basic to the person's character. tefillin is not basic to my character. It's not relevant to my. I mean, every mitzvah has a hashpah, has an influence on a person, but it's not. It's not going to a character trait that's going to change me. But tshuva and Torah seem to be those two mitzvahs that are very fundamental to the becoming a tzaddik. So, Be'ez Hashem, on Tuesday we'll begin Shar HaTshuva.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure.